Hello everyone, and welcome to this channel, where I, a former forensic officer, share the inexplicable experiences I encountered on duty. Today, I bring you a special episode. Throughout my years as a police officer, I've faced numerous incidents that science couldn't explain. But today's story is particularly unusual. It's about a strange occurrence I encountered during a night patrol when I was much younger. Before I begin, I'd like to express my gratitude to my two grandchildren who help with editing. It's thanks to their support that I can share these stories with you in this format. When I open up my old diaries, I find detailed records of those times, and today I'll share a bit of that with you, adding a bit of color to the tale. So please look forward to this mysterious experience. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's begin the story. A story from when I started my career as a police officer. During that time, I often worked night shifts, and the deep silence of the night sometimes felt overwhelmingly oppressive. It was my job to ensure that people could sleep peacefully by safeguarding the town at night. One night, I was patrolling with a senior officer. The area was quiet, and it seemed like a night of peace without any incidents. However, despite it being the middle of the night, our patrol car passed by an old cemetery. Cemeteries are places people usually avoid, and patrolling there during the night felt somewhat eerie. As we were driving along a path that cut through the cemetery, suddenly, an unnatural light caught our eye from the back of the cemetery. The light was pale blue, almost as if something was emitting it. Even my usually calm senior officer frowned upon seeing it. "What's that?" His words made me catch my breath. The fact that he couldn't explain the light made me feel even more anxious. We stopped the car to check where the light was coming from. I will tell you about the true nature of this strange light and the impact it had on us. Indeed, there are phenomena in this world that science cannot explain. We parked the car near the cemetery around 2 a.m. As we turned off the engine, the surrounding silence deepened, and the light became even more distinct to our eyes. My senior took out a flashlight and said, "Shall we go have a look?" I nodded silently and got out of the car. The only sounds breaking the silence were our footsteps and the distant chirping of insects. As we walked, the light seemed to seep through the gaps between the tombstones. My senior's face tightened a bit, but he bravely continued forward. I kept asking myself what this could be, and why it was happening in the middle of the night. As we got closer to the light source, its nature seemed to change. It wasn't just reflected light, it seemed like something was emitting it. One tombstone, in particular, was glowing strongly, illuminating the area around it with a dim, pale blue light. As we checked each tombstone, the light suddenly intensified, as if beckoning us. I hid behind my senior, carrying a sense of dread yet continuing forward. Was something pulling us to this place? Or was it just a coincidence? The tension was palpable, my heartbeat loud in my ears. When we reached the source of the light, it was in front of an old tombstone. The tombstone clearly emitted light, and there were strange patterns on the ground around it. The patterns resembled some ancient symbols, and light was pouring out from the center. I tentatively reached out to touch the pattern, but at that moment, my senior grabbed my shoulder. "Don't touch it, we don't know what might happen." His words snapped me back to reality, and I withdrew my hand. We stood there for a while, trying to understand what was happening. But we couldn't find any answers that night. We couldn't decipher what this strange light and symbols meant. Unable to leave the scene, we decided to further investigate the surroundings. My senior illuminated the area with his flashlight as we checked for other odd phenomena. As we moved deeper into the cemetery, the only sounds were our footsteps and the wind. Suddenly, we heard a low moaning sound from afar. The sound seemed to be coming from a specific direction within the cemetery. Mixed with fear and curiosity, we walked toward the sound. The moaning grew louder, and we focused on pinpointing its source. Following the moaning led us to a spot hidden among old trees. The area looked neglected and different from the rest of the cemetery. Between the trees, we could hear weak moaning accompanied by a pale blue light, giving the impression that something was suffering. "There's something here, be careful," my senior whispered lowly. As we approached the center of the area, near the roots of a large tree, we found a shadow crouching on the ground. It was transparent yet had the shape of a person, and it seemed to be the source of the light. The moaning was indeed coming from this shadowy figure. As we got closer, the shadow suddenly became quiet. The moaning stopped, and a moment of silence followed. Then, suddenly, the shadow disappeared, and the light vanished as well. All that was left was the cold air and an unresolved mystery. We left the cemetery that night with many questions and no answers. The experience was deeply perplexing, and we couldn't deny the possibility that some supernatural force was involved. However, without any scientific explanation available, we couldn't determine what the incident meant. Back in the patrol car, we sat in silence for a while. My senior held the steering wheel and stared off into the distance, seemingly deep in thought. I too pondered how to process an event I had never encountered before in my police career. "What do you think you saw?" my senior suddenly asked. I thought for a moment and shared my honest feelings. "Senior, honestly, I don't know what happened, but I feel that it wasn't just a coincidence or an illusion." My senior nodded but said nothing more. The events of that night seemed beyond our understanding. The next day, we reviewed the records to report the incident at the cemetery, but we found no useful evidence. The surveillance footage captured nothing, and there were no concrete proofs of the light or shadow we had witnessed. It was as if what we had seen was a mere illusion. "We can't leave any record of this," my senior muttered. Our experience meant that it wouldn't be officially reported due to the lack of evidence. Nevertheless, we shared a conviction that we had seen something extraordinary that night, though we had no way to prove it. In the following days, I often revisited the events of that night, the inexplicable light and shadow, and the vanishing moaning. These were deeply etched in my mind, and even altered my perspective as a police officer. I had no choice but to accept that there are things in this world that science cannot explain. This encounter was a meeting with the unknown for me, and it brought a cautious approach to my subsequent investigations. I learned not to overlook anything and to find meaning in everything. This mysterious experience fundamentally changed my approach to my duties. A few days passed, and we returned to our regular duties. However, the events of that night continued to linger in our minds. As part of our daily routine, I especially spent a lot of time thinking about how the police should respond to unexplained phenomena. What I learned from this experience is the importance of not ignoring any strange and unexplainable phenomena, but instead carefully observing and recording them. By confronting the unknown, we can become better prepared officers. My senior and I had the opportunity to share this experience during a training session within our department. Our story provided a new perspective for the younger officers and influenced their investigative approaches. We emphasized the importance of mental preparation when facing inexplicable phenomena and how to maintain composure. During the training, we shared our story and discussed the lessons we learned from our encounter with the unknown. This sparked meaningful discussions among our colleagues and helped build a stronger cooperative system. Ultimately, our experience became an important lesson in our daily police work, acknowledging the existence of phenomena that science cannot explain, and figuring out how to deal with them has enhanced the quality of our duties. Our experience was not just a one-night event, but continued to affect our work over the long term. This incident taught me to always keep in mind how to deal with unexplainable phenomena when encountering them, not to fear, meeting the unknown, and to adopt a learning attitude. This mysterious experience brought us lessons and wonders when we faced something we don't usually see. This story shows how dealing with phenomena that science can't explain can affect our hearts and duties. That night, we didn't just witness mere light and shadows. They taught us about the fear of the unknown, curiosity, and the courage to overcome them. This experience was significant not only as a police officer, but also as a personal growth event. I hope this story has made you feel something as well. If you liked this video, please hit the like button. We plan to continue delivering such mysterious stories, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Lastly, through this episode, I hope you can appreciate the importance of keeping an open mind towards the mysterious phenomena you might encounter in your daily life. Every experience is a valuable lesson, and it's up to us to make the most of it.